everyone, welcome back to East Coast Haunts. I'm MK.
And I'm Sam.
And we're going to be keeping it pretty local with this site that we're covering this week.
I believe you actually were at this site the past weekend, no?
I believe I was. And you know what else I believe?
What do you believe?
We were there together a few years back.
Yep, we have both been here together and separately. MK was here over the weekend, and the place that we are going to be talking about today is the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Very neat. Love this place.
Yeah, this place is awesome. The tour, if you ever get a chance to go, if you're in Philadelphia, totally recommend.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. It's so worth it.
We both love it. It's a little spooky. It's a lot of history, but not the boring kind.
Oh, no. It's fascinating.
And there are lots of, colorful characters in this,
yeah.
You're going to enjoy it.
Some names that you're going to recognize,
Some
too.
very, very, very...
Yeah. That you
very
should
famous
recognize.
names. Yes.
Let's do our little introductory laundry list.
All right, let's get into it.
So, big news. The Watcher series on Netflix comes out
literally tomorrow.
Well,
when this
as
comes
we're
out,
recording this, it'll probably already be out.
Yeah,
so
go watch it.
Go watch it.
But first, go listen to our episode.
Go listen to our case on the real, or our episode on the real life case.
Yes.
It's definitely gonna get you in the Halloween mood, I would say. So check that out. Also, we want to shout out our first 3 Patreons.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Thank you guys so much for donating. I haven't specified with them if it's okay to use their last name, so I'm just gonna say your first names. But if you reach out to me and say it's okay to use your last name via the Patreon app, I will go back and I'll give you another shout out. So our first 3 Patreons are Bill, Go Off King, Zach, and Oliviana.
Woo! Bill, Zach, and Oliviana, thank you guys so much.
You guys are the best. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up for the business portion of the episode.
So I guess that means we should kind of get into the history, right?
I think that's what it does mean, yeah.
All right, so let's get into the history of the Eastern State Penitentiary. So, this place, where do I begin? The amount of crazy stuff that happened here over the last however many years, I think it started in 1829, so it's almost at what? It's 200-year anniversary?
Yeah, almost. A few years shy.
You're gonna be shocked. It's great.
I'm very ready for this because the reason I was there this past weekend was not for a historical tour. So the last time I took the history tour
was when we were together, probably.
Yeah, which is probably close to 8 or 9 years ago.
Oh God, that's scary.
I know.
Yeah, so
I'm ready for my refresher.
So the Eastern State Penitentiary was built in 1829, like I said. It was the world's first true penitentiary. Now you might be asking, what is a penitentiary? What's the difference between a prison and a penitentiary? So a prison is obviously built to hold and punish those who have been convicted of crimes. We all know that. A penitentiary is a prison that is designed to inspire penance or true regret in the hearts of prisoners.
Huh.
So a prison is sort of built to punish, whereas a penitentiary is built to inspire regret in people and maybe even reform them.
And get them to repent.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So that's sort of what you should know about the penitentiary going forward. Is its original goal was to get people to repent and see the error of their ways and maybe even be able to go back into society one day.
Now how did they do that?
Well, they definitely lost their way throughout the years. But back in the day, in 1829 when it opened, its goal was to change inmates' behavior through, quote, confinement and solitude with labor. So basically working and being alone. Exactly.
Jesus.
So that was what they thought was going to change the world.
Okay.
Many leaders, especially during this time in the 1800s, believed that crime was the result of your environment and that solitude would make the criminal regretful and penitent.
Okay.
And that's actually, the word penitentiary was coined with this penitentiary, I guess.
Yes. this
like
institution?
this is like the first penitentiary ever.
Okay.
So it's like the word penitentiary was made when this penitentiary opened, if that makes any sense.
Yes, yeah, it does. It makes sense.
Basically, I'm saying it was the first of its kind. It was revolutionary. So this theory that criminals are criminals because of their environment, and that when they're put in solitude, they'll be regretful and penitent, that whole theory was called the Pennsylvania system.
Oh.
And it's interesting because most people in those days believed in the New York system, which is basically where they would just put everyone in a big prison and they could interact and stuff. Okay. In the about 150 years of the prison being open, about 75,000 inmates passed through Eastern State.
Oh.
So lots and lots of people.
Holy cow.
Especially when you find out how many people it was supposed to originally house. Like, it's a huge number.
Is there like a ton of overcrowding?
Of course there is.
Oh no.
So
wait, how does that work? Because they were supposed to be alone.
I know. But you'll see. I mean, they go farther and farther from the whole original idea of it. Okay. And eventually they're not even going to be isolated.
Okay.
So let's get into the building itself, because that's like a huge part of this.
Right.
The building itself was described as an architectural wonder because it had running water and central heat before most places had that. Even the White House. Like, this penitentiary had central heat and running water before the White House.
That is wild.
It is. And people would come to visit it. Like, it would attract people from other countries, from inside the country. Like, it was a big place for people to come and, like, marvel at.
I understand why. Because from the outside, it kind of looks like a castle.
It definitely has, like, a medieval castle feel from the outside. Eastern State was one of the most expensive buildings in the country when it was first built, and its design inspired many copycats in the years to come. In fact, its floor plan and system of solitary confinement became the model for over 300 prisons worldwide.
Oh my god.
So this was the first of its kind, but it would not be the last.
Okay.
So we're going to go back to 1776. Hugh Hamilton.
1776.
The Walnut Street Jail is the hot new jail accepting prisoners in Philadelphia. It was
a hot new jail.
That's the best way to describe it. It was created in order to fix prison overcrowding and the horrible conditions that were at Philadelphia's old stone jail.
Okay.
So this is sort of like the new place to be for prisoners.
The hip new spot.
Exactly. So fast forward 11 years, and the conditions and overcrowding are now just as bad at the Walnut Street Jail. So the hot new jail has become the
rundown.
Yep, old jail. So the first prison reform group in history is formed in Philadelphia around this time, and at the time it was called the Philadelphia Society for Alleviating Miseries of Public Prisons.
Jesus Christ.
That's
a long name.
They leave no question as to what they do.
Clearly.
But it's actually still around, and now it's known as the Pennsylvania Prison Society. So we've got the Walnut Street Jail getting overcrowded. We've got a prison reform group coming in and sort of like taking notice. Things are going to happen. So in 1790, there are 16 cells that are built inside the Walnut Street Jail. And these cells are collectively known as the Penitentiary House.
Ooh.
These cells start to begin with day and night solitary confinement. So it's sort of like they're easing into the idea of penitentiaries and solitary confinement without making an entire building for it.
Okay.
So inside the Walnut Street Jail, there's almost like a mini penitentiary.
Nice, I guess.
Yeah. So fast forward about 30 years. It's 1821, and after years and years of lobbying, the Philadelphia Society for Alleviating the Miseries of Public Prisons has a huge breakthrough. The Pennsylvania legislature approves funding to build the Eastern State Penitentiary, and this new prison will be massive, and it's going to hold 250 inmates, which doesn't sound like a ton, but...
No, that sounds smaller.
But when you think about the fact that each person is going to have their own cell...
Oh, yeah, okay.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
So it's 1821. Finally, this act is passed where they're going to build the Eastern State Penitentiary, so it should be a very exciting new time on the horizon.
I'd be excited if I was a prisoner too at Walnut Street.
I'd be thrilled if I was a prisoner.
Thank God they're getting me out of here.
I know, like a hot new jail to go to.
The hot new bombshell on the block.
Exactly. A new bombshell has entered the villa.
That's what it is.
So 4 architects submit their design for the new prison. It's like a contest of sorts. And British architect John Haviland wins because he has, I guess, the best design, and he's given a prize of $100, which probably for the time was a lot.
Okay.
Right? I don't know.
But considering the amount of time that it would take to design an entire prison,
yeah, they're like, here's $100.
I think I'd want a little bit more compensation for my time.
Yeah, like that is like a Trader Joe's run. Like that's not a lot of money. So this guy John Haviland wins, right? And so they're going to use his design for the Eastern State Penitentiary. Interestingly, one of the losing architects named William Strickland is asked to oversee the construction of the building, even though it's not his design. It kind of seems like a consolation prize,
yeah,
right?
A little bit.
So less than a year later, William Strickland, who was hired to oversee the construction, is fired.
Oh.
And then the original architect, Haviland, takes his place.
Okay.
Which I'm like, why didn't they just let the architect build his own building in the first place?
Oversee the construction in the first place. That's weird.
I'm like, I don't know if there was some sort of nepotism, favoritism going on, but
perhaps.
Haviland is our main guy, and he's the one who's to thank or to blame, however you want to look at it, for this building.
So he's the responsible.
Yes.
Okay.
So the building is unique because it's designed like a wheel. There's a center core, and there were 7 cell blocks coming out from the core. When it was first built, there were 7 cell blocks. Obviously, there's going to be more coming later.
Right.
And the whole thing was surrounded by a wall. So it sort of looks like a rectangular wheel. Would you say that sounds correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that makes sense.
So like it looks like a wheel, but instead of being
a circle, it's like
a rectangle. Yeah. So hopefully that makes sense. We'll post pictures if you can't picture it.
We'll post an aerial view of it.
Yes. So April 1829. We're getting closer to the opening because we know that it's going to open later in 1829. But in April, legislation is passed that allows for solitary confinement, like it's legalized, if you will, and plans are finalized to prohibit any contact between inmates at Eastern State. So we've got a check mark on solitary confinement being allowed, and also we've got a check mark on not allowing prisoners to have any contact while they're at the jail.
Solitary confinement scares me.
Yes.
It scares me what it does to the mind.
I know.
But anyway, that's probably the best option for, criminals.
But, we'll discuss, but, I feel like a lot of these criminals, really didn't even... The things that they did were, not nearly as bad as, the punishment was way worse than the crime.
I've heard a couple of, the inmates there they really didn't do a whole lot.
I know. So...
They didn't deserve this.
Kind of unfair, but... So, in order to ensure absolute solitary confinement, masks were made to keep prisoners from communicating when they would occasionally have to take a trip outside their cell. And whatever you're picturing for these masks that they would put on their heads, it's a million times worse. It was like a bag with it's just creepy. It almost looks like a scarecrow. They had these creepy mask things on, and so you could not see another person. If someone was being brought out, they didn't want you to know who the other person was. They didn't want any camaraderie or any companionship whatsoever.
Okay.
So,
they're there for business, not to make friends.
Exactly. And going off of that, each cell had its own little exercise yard so that the prisoners did not have to interact outside. And each cell had a little feed door for guards to drop food off so that they didn't have to interact with prisoners. So when we're saying solitary confinement, I cannot stress enough, you did not interact with other people whatsoever.
I remember them saying one thing on the tour, and I don't know if you were going to mention this, but I remember them saying that the guards at Eastern State Penitentiary would wear their socks over their boots so that the inmates couldn't hear them walking up and down the halls.
I did not know that.
So that they wouldn't even have the comfort of knowing that someone was there.
This is like a mind game.
That is so
How do you even think
messed up?
How do they even think to do that?
I don't know.
It's really sad. So all of this ends up leading to October 25th, 1829. And we're honestly almost at the exact... it's almost October 25th, so...
We're almost at the anniversary.
Yes, so happy anniversary, Eastern State. Anyway, Eastern State Penitentiary opens for the very first time. Its first inmate is named Charles Williams. And this is an example of someone who the punishment does not fit the crime.
Charles Williams?
Yes, so, quote, this is what it said about him. Quote, Charles Williams, prisoner number 1, burglar, 5 feet 7 inches tall, scar on nose, scar on thigh, farmer by trade, can read. Theft included one $20 watch, one $3 gold seal, and 1 gold key. Sentenced to 2 years confinement with labor. Received by Samuel R. Wood, first warden, Eastern State Penitentiary. Is that not a little bit excessive?
I think... Okay. Knowing what I know about what went on within the walls of Eastern State Penitentiary, I'm saying no, that he did not deserve it. But if they were like, hey, maybe we should try solitary confinement to
get these people to
repent, maybe them starting off quote unquote soft with like a burglar instead of maybe like a mass murderer.
You're probably right. Yeah, they're starting with like the people with lesser crimes.
Exactly. Maybe that's smart. And
to
maybe
see if it works. Yeah.
Exactly. They don't want anyone who was violent previously to get more violent.
Yeah. You're right. Actually, I didn't think about it like that, but that makes sense. And honestly, like, I know we look back at it now and we're like, oh my god, like all this stuff was so cruel, but like when this first opened at the time, it was like innovative. It was like, oh wow, look at like this amazing opportunity that we're giving to people to reform their lives, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like we're looking back on it because obviously now we're like,
hindsight's 2020.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like I said, they had those masks that were fabricated, literally terrifying. They had the feed doors, like you said, they couldn't even hear the guards coming. They were completely alone. So things don't stay on track for long. Okay. By the time the cell block 3 was completed in 1831, the prison was already well over capacity. So all subsequent cell blocks that were built had 2 floors. So it started, all the cell blocks were supposed to just be one floor.
Okay.
But as soon as they got to cell block 3 and that was completed, they were like, oh shoot, like we have way too many people in here. Let's make each cell block
2 stories.
Yeah, 2 stories. I was gonna say like double story, and I was like, that's not correct. Yeah, let's make each 2 stories. So, and we'll see later. Then they're gonna start to make them 3 stories. So,
oh God,
it was like they got ahead of themselves. Then also in that same year, 1831, the first female prisoner is received.
Ooh.
And so so we're getting some diversity in here.
Did they house them in the same cell block as?
That's a really good question. I believe they did not.
Okay.
I think that they kept them very, very separate.
Okay, good. Cool.
So the very first escape happened in 1832,
Ooh.
so just a year after, cell block 3 was completed. The inmate who escaped lowered himself from the roof of the front building. I don't know how he got on the roof.
Oh.
But he just slowly lowered himself from the roof to the ground. And he was eventually captured, but was able to escape the exact same way 5 years later. So, honestly, props to him. If you believe it, you can achieve it.
If you're not going to monitor and maybe have a little flag on this prisoner that says, he escaped by trying to...
Flight risk.
Yeah. Climb off the roof. Maybe don't let him get on the roof again.
Yes, and I also, how did he even get up on the roof in the first place? I don't know.
I don't know.
If at first you don't succeed, try again. So, this king gets out, whatever. Then in 1834, things continue to just not look so great. There's an investigation into the prison's finances, punishment practices, and deviations from the Pennsylvania system of confinement. So, people are starting to see that this whole, solitary confinement theory is maybe not working as well when it's actually applied in real life.
I wonder why.
And it's only going to get worse from here.
I'm not shocked.
Yeah, it just keeps slipping farther and farther away from the original purpose of the penitentiary.
Gotcha.
For example, in 1877, so we're fast forwarding a couple years, 4 new cell blocks are constructed in the space between the existing blocks. So now there's really barely any room left to be making more cell blocks, but they're still doing it. Which means that these cell blocks are going to be much smaller. They have no exercise yards attached.
Oof.
Which means that prisoners won't have anywhere to get fresh air or stretch out, really.
Oh, no.
I'm sure that maybe they had them get out somehow, maybe. But, like, they couldn't just, like, go out for their hour every day because they didn't have their own
That's
little
brutal.
area of land. I know. Then 34 years later, in 1911, cell block 12 is completed, and it's drastically different in a bad way from all the blocks that came before it. It consists of 3 floors, so this is a tall ass cell block. And each floor has 40 cells each. There's no arched ceilings, no skylight, which was kind of like a selling point. Like, oh, like there's gonna be a skylight, like they can see the sky. Not here. No arched ceiling, no skylight, just a tiny little narrow window.
Do you know what they called the skylight?
Was it like God's like, what was it? God's view
You're
or something?
So close. It's called the Eye of God.
Yes!
Yes.
See? God's always watching. That's probably what they wanted to.
That's absolutely.
So this one does not have the Eye of God or anything like that. These ones are like bare bones. Apparently, the inmates were the ones who had to like construct this too.
Oh God.
I know. So it's just like a lot. It's just sketchy.
That's a lot.
In 1913, the whole Pennsylvania system of solitary confinement is just fully abandoned. They're like, never mind, haha, we're not doing that anymore. Even though they really hadn't been following it closely in the past few decades. But it's like officially abandoned. They like officially are like, we're done in 1913. Okay, in 1924, inmates all eat together in the dining hall for the first time.
Ooh.
Which is a huge deal because they have been so gung-ho about this solitary confinement for like so many decades, and now they're just like, screw it, everyone's eating together in a giant cafeteria.
Mealtime.
Exactly. So they kind of go, they're just like, you know what, forget all that.
How about a social club or two?
Exactly. So things are obviously no longer going to be how they once were supposed to be.
Clearly.
And also that same year, in 1924, Pep the dog is sentenced to life.
Pep the dog!
But more on that later.
favorite
I'm saving
inmate.
that, King. So that's more on that later. We'll talk about that later. But in 1926, cell block 14 is built, which is like, there were supposed to be 7. Now we've got 14
Now we're
cell
doubling it
blocks.
up.
Yes, it's got the 3-story cell block style again. And the penitentiary, okay, so remember, it was only supposed to hold 250 people. Guess how many people it is holding at this point?
Do I even want to know?
No.
Okay.
But you have to guess.
250. Like 700.
1,700.
Oh my God!
No, granted, obviously, like, there are lots more cell blocks and stuff, but I mean, they're not great cell blocks. Like, they don't have a lot of room. That's so many extra people.
Oh.
So, not a great time.
No, that skeezes me.
Well, in 1933, prisoners are starting to get a little peeved. They set fires in their cells and they riot because there's overcrowding and insufficient recreational facilities, they said. I know, which I'm like, that's like a weird hill to die on.
Be glad that you have recreational facilities because the brothers that came before you had...
Nothing!
They
had to wear bags on their heads when they walked through the hallway. Like, sorry, the pool table isn't up to your standards.
But at least they had central heating.
Yeah.
And
running water. Like, kind of bougie if you ask me. And then another riot happens just a year later in 1934, and this time it was over low wages. Which to that I say, you're in jail.
Wait. The inmates are rioting over low wages?
Yes.
Okay.
I know, I was like, am I missing something here? Like, I thought they were in jail.
They couldn't buy enough chips and soda at the commissary.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, like, I mean, anyway, so, lots of riots going on. 1945, shocker, things continue to go downhill. This is the year of the infamous tunnel escape, which is literally the funniest thing I have ever heard in my life. I literally was like, as I was reading this, I had like tears in my eyes. It is so freaking funny. So, the tunnel escape in 1945. There are 12 inmates, all men, and they make this plan to escape through a tunnel. And you know what? They do it. So I'm going to tell you how it happened.
Okay.
To make the tunnel, the prisoners would work in 30-minute shifts in pairs of 2.
Okay.
So, like, 2 men would go and, like, be digging while the other ones, I don't know, kept lookout or something in 30-minute shifts over and over again.
Where were they digging the hole out of?
They were digging in the wall of one of the cells, sort of like in the corner of one of the cells.
Okay.
So they dug a 31-inch opening through the wall of cell 68.
Okay.
And this was not done overnight. This was painstaking work. They used spoons and flattened cans. Sort of like a shovel. I guess they tried to use a flattened can as a shovel.
A little rudimentary, but I guess those low wages couldn't buy a shovel.
I know, right? Exactly. And then, so they dug that 31-inch opening, and then from there, they dug 12 feet into the ground and 100 feet out beyond the prison walls.
Go off.
Yes.
It's giving Shawshank Redemption.
Yes, I'm sure there was some. I'm sure Shawshank Redemption took some.
I would think so.
Some inspo from this.
Well, another Stephen King novel took inspiration from this prison.
Which one?
The Green Mile.
Oh.
Which I'll talk about that a little bit later. But
ooh, I'm interested.
That inspired this
I'm
prison
intrigued.
inspired the Green Mile.
So again, keep in mind spoons and flattened cans. All the dirt that they dug up, because obviously they were digging up dirt as they went into the ground, they would put the dirt in their pockets and then scatter it in the yard when they had time outside.
Okay, yes.
So
this definitely inspired Shawshank.
So the tunnel was somehow not noticed during guard inspections, whether that was because of the genius of these men or like the stupidity of the guards. Who's to say? And they actually had created a fake panel that matched the plaster of the wall to the cell that would cover up the hole, and they put a little trash can in front of it. So, like, you couldn't tell that there was anything out of place.
That's literally so smart.
It is. And, again, remember, 12 feet down and then 100 feet beyond prison walls, like...
That's ridiculous.
If I was watching a movie where this happened, I would be like, that's stupid, that's unrealistic. Like, everyone knows that. But it just literally happens in real life.
But, okay, so 12 feet is deeper than the average swimming pool. Like, the deep end of the average swimming pool. And then 100 feet is a third of a football field. It's like 1.5 school buses.
I just don't understand how they...
That's wild.
Didn't get caught. And also, I was reading, I don't have anything, like, written down about this, so... I don't want to, like, give any false information, but it was something along the lines of, like, they had, like, advanced stuff down there, like, to make sure that, like, no noxious fumes got into the tunnel and stuff like that. It was, like, legit.
Wow.
I know. And especially back when, like, there wasn't really a ton of, like, technological advances. I don't know. It was just crazy. So, like I said, there were 12 escapees. The most infamous among them was, for sure, Mr. Willie Sutton.
Oh, yeah.
You might also know Willie by one of his nicknames, such as Slick Willie, the Gentleman Bandit,
Slick Willie,
Willie the Actor, and the Babe Ruth of bank robbers. I'm assuming he came up with all of these for himself.
Kind of like a BTK situation.
Yes.
I like
Slick
these.
Willie. Slick Willie.
Oh God, I'm sorry. Why would you ever? No, because there's no way he would choose to go by Slick Willie.
The Babe Ruth of bank robbers.
Well, that's kind of like fire, but Slick Willie.
The Gentleman Bandit. I know Slick Willie's like, no. Ew. Willie the Actor. Like, choose a lane and go with it. You can't have like 12 different nicknames. So he was originally sent to Eastern State Penitentiary after a machine gun robbery of a bank in Philly. So that's why Slick Willie was in the slammer.
Slick Willie. And
Willie takes full credit for the escape, although it's more likely that the real mastermind behind it was actually an inmate named Clarence Cleandist. And he was a plasterer, a stonemason, a mason. I guess a stonemason and a mason are two different things.
I guess so. I have no idea.
A burglar and a forger. So he was, I think, the one that really did the majority of the work on this.
You know what's really weird?
What?
I went through a phase where I was obsessed with the, like, infamous escape from Alcatraz.
I remember this phase.
And one of the guys that escaped from there, his name was Clarence, too. And they had that sort of, like, the same exact thing where they would, like, they made the panel that fit over their cell wall.
What year was that escape?
I want to say 62.
That's a good point. I'm actually wondering if the guys from Alcatraz heard about the Eastern State Penitentiary foiled plan and sort of used that as inspiration.
Maybe.
Because there was like a 20-year difference in between them.
Yeah.
Word probably got around.
Would not surprise me. People gossip in the prison world.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's a small world. Small, tight-knit community. So on the morning of April 3rd, 1945, the 12 prisoners decide today's the day. And they sneak their way into cell 68 on their way to breakfast. In Slick Willie's autobiography called Where the Money Was, he recalls, quote, "One by one, the men lowered themselves to the tunnel, and on hands and knees crept the 120 feet to its end. The remaining 2 feet of earth were scraped away, and men rumbled from the hole to scurry in all directions. I leapt from the hole, began to run, and came face to face with 2 policemen. They stood for a moment, paralyzed with amazement. I was soaking wet, and my face was covered with mud. 'Put your hands up or I'll shoot.' One of them recovered more quickly than the other. 'Go ahead, shoot,' I snarled at them, and at that moment I honestly hoped he would. Then I wheeled and began to run. He emptied his gun at me, but I wasn't hit. None of the bullets hit me, but they did make me swerve, and in swerving I tripped, fell, and they had me."
Oh my god.
Yeah. Imagine the months of planning, and they literally get through.
Oh. What? Okay, first of all, this man is obviously a narcissist. In the way that he writes this. Second of all, you're going to call yourself the mastermind of the plan and get caught?
Within 3 minutes, actually, is the exact amount of time. Other guys lasted hours or days or months. Everyone eventually got caught, spoiler alert, but he got caught after 3 minutes. Like, imagine coming out of that hole, looking up, and there's a police officer right there.
Oh my god, spending however long it took to build this tunnel?
At least months. At least months.
If not
years.
Yeah.
So, I also thought it was funny how he was like, he emptied his gun, but he didn't hit me. Like, bro.
I'm like a fucking ninja.
Yeah, like, he's, like, trying to flex, and it's just like, stop, sir. I also thought it was interesting how it said, the remaining 2 feet of earth were scraped away. I feel like by that they meant, like, they, like, covered up the hole, maybe?
Probably.
Which I thought was, like, terrifying. I'm like, imagine getting stuck in there.
Oh.
Right? I would be too claustrophobic to, I think, even try that. I would be like, I'm just going to stay here with Pep the dog.
Pep the dog.
So, by the end of the day, half of the escapees had already been returned to the prison, and the rest were caught within a couple months.
Tragic.
Something sad that the guy that was, like, kind of the mastermind behind it all, Clarence, he made it 3 hours before being recaptured, but the sad part is that he only had 2 years left of his sentence.
Oh, no.
And then for the escape, they added on 10 years. So
10 years?
If he had just waited it out, he would have been out. But now he was in it for those 2 years plus those 10 years.
Yeah,
so.
no.
Like, was it worth it?
Just do the 2 extra years.
I know, it's not worth it. So, like I said, some people made it months, some people made it hours, really made it 3 minutes. And the first few that were captured were put in the Klondikes, which were the illegal solitary confinement cells that were secretly and, like I said, illegally built by guards below one of the cell blocks. You couldn't stand or lie down in them. So, like,
horrific.
You were kind of in this, like, weird limbo. Like, you couldn't stand, you couldn't lay, so you just kind of had to, like, I guess awkwardly, uncomfortably sit.
That's actually... Yeah, or, like, curl up into a ball.
This is just one of those things where it's, like, the risk did not outweigh the reward.
No,
like,
it didn't. I would have just waited out those 2 extra years.
I know, and it's crazy because it's, like, I know that they're technically, like, they all broke the law at some point, but, like, I'm rooting for them because I'm like, oh my, like, it's such an underdog story.
I always, back bringing this all the way back to Alcatraz again.
Yeah.
I was always rooting for them. I hope that they made it out. Because it's not like any of them were, like, murderers.
Especially a lot of them were just, like, bank robbers. Like, old-timey bank robbers. So, So, going back to that guy, Sutton, Slick Willie, as we like to call him.
Slick Willie.
He was actually eventually transferred to a different prison called Holmesburg Prison, which was known for being escape-proof.
Oh.
He then escaped. And he managed to not be caught for 6 years.
Okay.
And he was eventually rearrested because someone recognized him on the Brooklyn subway from, like, a wanted poster.
Just let him go.
I know! And he made it 6 years. I just thought it was so funny how the prison, it reminded me of, like, how in Titanic, they're like, it's an unsinkable ship. And they're like, it's an escape-proof prison, and then he escaped. Like, honestly, they probably called him Slick Willie because he was able to, squeeze his way out of, like,
probably
all these, you know what I mean? Like, that's probably where he got it from, now that I'm thinking about it. A little Slick Willie. So we're going to speed things up a little bit more. Because for the rest of this, it's just kind of, like, continuing to go downhill. In 1961, the largest riot in the prison's history occurs, which fuels discussion about closing the prison. It officially closes in 1970, and it was fully abandoned by the following year. In 1994, Eastern State Penitentiary opened for historic daily tours. And it's kind of funny because when people would do the tours back then, like when it first opened, they had to wear hard hats and sign waivers because it was so decrepit. I know, but then as the 2000s like progressed, they like took away the need for like the hard hats and the waivers and stuff because like they made sure everything was safe.
I would hope so.
And in 1996, the World Monument Fund included the Eastern State Penitentiary on its top 100 most endangered landmarks in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not exactly a list that I think I'd want to be on.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's not on it now because now it's like very well taken care
of.
Oh
yeah, it's very well maintained nowadays.
I have 2 quick little fun historical facts to wrap it up.
Hit me with it.
So, we know, you're going to be talking about this in a little bit, but we know Al Capone was the most famous prisoner here.
Yes.
He was actually arrested outside of a movie theater in Philly for carrying a concealed, unlicensed .38 caliber revolver. And yeah, which is like of all the bad things that he did, like that's what he was arrested for. It's weird, right? He was given the max sentence, which is 1 year in prison. And the court was obviously trying to make an example out of him. Like, oh, look at this gangster, mobster. Like, this is what happens. Like, so you better not do it. Like, look, your famous mobster is going to jail.
That's silly.
Yeah, so they make this big show of sending him to prison. But then once Al actually got to the Eastern State Penitentiary, he was fancy living. He had fancy furnitures and rugs, beautiful paintings. He had a nice radio through which he would play waltz music. Like,
I love his cell because everything else in this prison is like
decrepit,
miserable, decrepit, and man has Oriental rugs, like fine
like
art.
How? It's hilarious.
This like polished wooden desk and like a radio. Like, come on.
Imagine being one of the other prisoners.
But I don't even think I'd say anything if I was close to him.
Oh, I wouldn't say.
You would get to listen to the radio.
That's true. And also Al Capone. Like,
yeah, I'm not messing with him.
But I just thought that was so interesting. Like, some people didn't have it too bad. And also, my final little fun fact. In 1842, author Charles Dickens, a la A Christmas Carol, and what else did he write?
Yeah, he also wrote Oliver Twist.
Oliver, yes. And, Tale of Two Cities. I just thought of that one.
Yes.
So, obviously, a very, very famous author. He visited the U.S. in 1842, and he was like, okay, I've got 2 things in my itinerary. Niagara Falls and Eastern State Penitentiary.
All the
interesting,
hits.
Right? Yeah, I'm like, okay. And he later wrote of the visit, saying, quote, "The system is rigid, strict, and hopeless solitary confinement, and I believe it, in its effects, to be cruel and wrong." So when he saw this place, he was like, nah, this is not the way to go. Like, solitary confinement is not going to make much of a difference. And he was right.
And you know what? On that note, I'm going to talk about why I think this place is haunted. Because he's absolutely right. It was cruel and wrong. And a lot of the stuff that they did to the prisoners there is
a
disgusting.
Recipe for disaster and hauntings.
So, this prison is one of the most haunted prisons in the world, and it's also on the top of, like, the most haunted places in the world.
Not surprising.
No, it's not. Horrible torture methods, desolate conditions, murder, suicide, rampant disease, tuberculosis was huge there, and obviously widespread insanity. Because if you're locked up in a room by yourself, it addles the mind.
Absolutely.
So here are some of the fun little torture methods that they used to use.
I'm nervous.
Oh, you should be.
These are going to be brutal.
They're horrible. So the first is the mad chair. And basically they would just bind the inmates to this chair. It would cut off their circulation for days at a time. And that would lead to limbs being amputated.
Days at a time?
Yep. They would starve them.
They would sit in there just for days?
And they would sit in their own waste.
Oh, Lord.
Because there was no toilet. They starved them and dehydrated them. So they deprived them of both food and water.
So they're trying to starve them / get their limbs to have no blood and then have to be amputated.
Yep.
Okay, that's horrible.
Next one, even worse. Iron gag. Inmates' hands are restrained, like, above and behind their head.
Okay.
And strapped to a collar made of iron that kind of inserted, like, a horse's bit into their mouth.
Hello.
And any movement that they made would rip the tongue and cut into the sides of the mouth. And if you've ever, like, bit your tongue or, like, bit the side of your mouth, you know that it, like,
hurts like no one's business.
It does, but also, since there's so much, like, blood flow to your head, there's a lot of blood going
my god,
into your mouth and whatnot. And so, like, people would die of blood loss.
Oh, wow.
Because they would rip their tongue and, like, obviously it would never get a chance to heal. So they were bleeding out.
Yeah. Wait, this might be kind of a stupid question, but, like, with, like, the horse chomper, whatever that is.
Yes, the bit.
Yeah, like, this is going to sound so stupid, but couldn't they, like, spit it out or no?
No, I think it's, like,
attached to their mouth.
Yeah, it's, like, locked into.
That is absolutely horrible.
It's like a, almost like the Hannibal Lecter mask.
Yes.
But, like, with a portion that goes inside your mouth.
Wow.
So.
That is atrocious. How do they even think of that?
I don't know. So then there was the water bath in which they dunked inmates in, like, a water bath to the point of, like, almost drowning them. And then they would bring them outside and strap them to the wall with chains in the middle of winter so that ice would form on their skin.
Okay.
And they would get hypothermia.
Whatever happened to the penitentiary part of this?
I don't know. This place went, like you said, so downhill from the beginning.
They used it as an excuse to torture people.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think. Yeah.
100%. Which is why this place is haunted beyond belief. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Klondike cells, which, as you said, are the illegal solitary confinement cells below the cell blocks.
Yeah.
So they called this the hole for obvious reasons. And they would put, like, rowdy prisoners down here for weeks at a time. Okay. Days or weeks at a time. And there was no light or fresh air. There was no windows. It was literally a box.
Okay.
No exercise, no bathroom or any facilities, like no water, no running water. They had limited food, water, and air.
Oh, and air.
Yes. Some of them felt like they were suffocating down there.
Because this was underground, you're right.
Mm-hmm. So when I just walked past this place, it was, like, not hard to believe that this is one of the most active areas in the prison.
Oh, yeah.
And it just, I don't know if I was biased because I knew what happened down there, but it gave me a really weird feeling.
Yeah.
I like, ugh.
You're like, something is not.
Ugh.
You know something horrible happened down there.
So, like you said, on January 8th, 1961, there was that huge riot at Eastern State Penitentiary, and a lot of people died. But I'm going to, like, go into a little bit of what happened.
Okay, yeah, let's hear it.
So there was a prisoner, John Klausenberg, and he was walking back to his cell with a guard, and the guard was like brand spanking new.
Okay.
Like he had just been hired. And John is kind of like vibing with him, and he's like, hey, can we go by my friend's cell?
Oh, no.
And like, can you just like let him out for a second? I
What?
just have to like give him something or whatever.
Immediately.
So
no.
the guard does what John is asking, and the two of them overpower the guard and together free 800 other prisoners.
800?
800 other prisoners.
Let's also remember that there was supposed to only be 250.
Yes. And they all begin rioting. So
Oh,
they
wow.
light rooms on fire. They stole prescriptions from like the commissary.
Oh, wow.
They killed the guards and then took their uniforms and put them on so that when eventually the police guards and state troopers like stormed Eastern State Penitentiary and tried to like regain control, they had no idea who was a prisoner and who was a guard.
That
So
is
they
terrifying.
Locked them up together in the same cells until they could like identify.
Imagine being an actual guard and being locked up with all the prisoners.
Yeah.
I would just want them to think I was a prisoner, hopefully.
Oh, me too. And like one of the scariest parts about this is they cut the phone lines into the.
This has all the makings of a horror movie.
Yes, it does. But the goal of the riot was, like a distraction
Right.
for escape attempt.
Okay.
So they wanted to leave by one of the vehicles that was like in the garage of the penitentiary, but they got out to the garage and they were immediately caught by police.
Classic.
But these prisoners were smart and armed themselves with meat cleavers from the kitchen.
Stop.
So none of the prisoners died. One of them had a fractured skull but survived.
Okay.
But a lot of the guards were killed.
Wow.
So very
That's
sad.
horrible. I see why that was the last straw.
Yes. To bring you back up from that, when the prison closed in 1971, the site obviously became a museum, but it was preserved, not restored.
Okay.
So it's like...
It's still pretty dilapidated.
Yes, it is. But it's safe to walk through,
Right.
obviously. So it had been abandoned for several decades by the time that it became this museum.
Right.
So when they brought in like volunteers to clean it up, they discovered that there was a large population of feral cats living inside the
Ooh.
penitentiary. And there was a man named Dan McLeod, and he would go in like 3 or 4 times a week and like feed this entire population of cats, right?
That's so cute.
Which is so cute. And then his wife like was really into it too, and she passed away like a few days before their 50th wedding anniversary.
Oh, that's
and
so
one
sad.
of the last things that she said to him was, "Did you feed the cats?" It was just so sad.
I love them. They're so
I know,
sweet.
they're so cute. So when Dan ended up passing, there was this art installation that was installed in the prison called the Ghost Cat art installation, and it was like a sculpture, like 30-something sculptures that paid homage to these feral cats.
That is so sweet.
Isn't it cute?
Do you know if they still have any of the feral cats walking around?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I
haven't
feel it's a
seen-
liability. Like, tourists are going to get scratched, but...
But bringing it back now to another animal that haunts these prison grounds,
Our boy.
my favorite ghost maybe of all time.
Yeah, probably of
Maybe
all time.
Pep the dog. So Pep was arrested for supposedly killing a cat.
It was
The governor's wife's
Yeah.
cat.
Yes.
And
Arrested and charged with.
yes.
Imagine being, like, in the jury, like, for this.
I think it was more so to like raise morale in the prison.
It definitely was.
But
But it's kind of hilarious.
still fun nonetheless. So they say that Pep still haunts the prison and roams the cell blocks.
That
which
is the
kind of
cutest
cute.
thing ever.
I did not run into him while I was there, which I was very sad. But I did get a very delicious drink called Pep's Pumpkin Punch, and it was very
Delicious.
yummy. And they have like a mugshot on the wall of one of the cell blocks. They got Pep to pose for a mugshot.
Like a real mugshot.
Yes.
It is the funniest thing ever.
So you can
look him up.
bet your asses that's going to be on the Instagram. So let's talk about some of the most haunted areas of the prison. We'll start with cell block 4. And this is probably the most haunted cell block.
Okay.
So visitors report seeing disembodied faces in the cells, which is extremely scary because you really can't see inside the cells because they're so dark.
Right.
Because, like, if you're there at night, there's no light and there's no skylight.
God's eye is not letting in.
So seeing just a face,
that's scarier.
Horrifying.
That is scarier than just seeing any other body part.
Oh, absolutely. They hear voices murmuring behind them, but no one's there.
Okay.
And then there's a very famous story about a locksmith named Gary Johnson who went into cell block 4, and he was trying to remove a 140-year-old lock from one of the doors.
Oh, wow.
And as soon as he got it to open, he felt restrained and he wasn't able to move, like, at all. And suddenly, all around him, he saw this, like, tornado of pained, disembodied faces of inmates screaming and, like, calling to him. And then a single inmate emerged and, like, called him by name.
Okay.
And he just described it as, quote, the release of years of negative energy.
Wow.
And
by unlocking that lock?
Yes.
I wonder what year this was.
I think it was, like, in the 90s.
Okay, so it was, like, recent.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was after, a 140-year-old lock, so I guess it was...
Had to have been.
Yeah,
like, the 90s.
So that's
wow.
freaky as shit. Cell block 6 is home to shadow figures and strange, like, disembodied noises.
Okay.
The rattling of the bars and screaming in hallways. There's disembodied voices, and they start to get, like, a little bit louder. Like, they're not just murmurs now.
Okay. Terrifying.
So cell block 12 is different now, moving into that one. Like you said, there's changes in the architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Here is where it really starts, like, ramping up. There's blood-curdling laughs and screams.
Okay.
And this, I think, I have a theory here.
Okay.
So cell block 4 and 6, right?
Yeah.
They were, like, mostly solitary, like, in the very beginning, like, they were, like, solitary,
okay.
right? Because they were part of the original 7.
Right.
Cell block 12 was when it started to, like, let go of that solitary a little bit. So this cell block was used for group classes and, like, work, and people used to get, like, their GEDs, and then eventually they formed, like, sports teams.
Okay.
So I kind of think that, like, a less dark interpretation of, like, laughs and yells could have been, like, the prisoners, like, finally being able to interact with one
I actually
another.
like that a lot. That makes the blood-curdling laughs a lot less scary.
Yeah, because they're like,
having fun together,
yeah,
playing
they're
soccer.
playing football or whatever, yeah.
It's kind of sweet, actually.
Exactly. So then they have numerous watchtowers, and people say that you can still see, like, guards who died in the riot patrolling them.
Wow, okay.
Which is kind of freaky.
Yeah.
And then obviously now going to Al Capone's cell, like we said, very bougie, but Al Capone, while he was here, was haunted by a particular ghost, and that was that of Jimmy Clark, who was a mob boss that Capone had killed in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which was basically like the final culmination of a gang war between Capone and another, like, Irish North Side Chicago gang leader, Bugs Moran.
Okay.
So 4 men of Capone's gang dressed as police officers and executed 7 members of Moran's gang.
And one of them was Jimmy Clark.
One of them was Jimmy Clark.
So Jimmy followed him to this prison.
And followed him for the rest of his life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so very scary. But, like, people who were next to him in the cells would report hearing him scream all night, like, Jimmy, get out, leave me alone, blah, blah, blah.
Wow, that kind of ruins Al Capone's reputation a little bit.
Little, like, not as, he got his justice given to him by a ghost.
Wow.
But, you know.
A ghost named Jimmy, nonetheless.
Jimmy! Get out.
Get out, Jimmy.
So, then they have numerous watchtowers and people say that you can still see, like, guards who died in the riot patrolling them.
Okay.
Which is kind of freaky. Now, for the reason that I was at Eastern State Penitentiary this past weekend, we went there to celebrate my friend's birthday by doing a very special spooky season event that they have called Halloween Nights, which was previously known as Terror Behind the Walls.
Yeah, why did they change it to Halloween Nights?
I think it changed during the pandemic. I think it's a different company that runs it.
Okay.
But
I've come up with a better Halloween Nights.
Halloween Nights. It's Halloween. It's at night.
You're right.
What else? What else
could you ask for?
So you can go there and you can take historical tours. There's an audio tour that's like self-led that's narrated by Steve Buscemi.
Is that the one? No, I'm sure that's the one.
I think it is.
That's so funny.
But at night, they transform it into basically like a giant haunted house, and they actually do haunted houses in the cell blocks.
That is so fun.
Which is so neat. So they have themed bars and performances, like what do you call them when like everyone drops everything and like does a
flash mob?
Yes.
Those are my worst fear. I never want to get stuck in a flash mob.
They do. Well, you can tell who's in it because they're all dressed as skeletons.
Okay.
They have spooky s'mores and ghost stories.
What makes the s'mores spooky?
That you're roasting them in a
haunted prison where thousands of people died. Got it.
Photo ops, and then 5 different haunted houses.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you a little review of each of them.
Okay, let's go.
So let's start out. I'll give you the order that we went through.
Okay.
So we started out with one called Big Top Terror, which is...
clowns.
Can you guess?
Clowns.
Circus
carnival.
Performers, like contortionists.
Okay.
Very scary. It was kind of a good one to like ease you in because I would say it's not as scary as some of the other houses.
It's like performers.
Yeah.
Doing cool stuff.
They got me a few times with the jump scares though.
Oh,
they really did. The next one that we went through was called Delirium.
Ooh.
And that one was really trippy. So
Okay.
you put on like 3D glasses and you go through like a neon. It's like everything's neon and there's like spray paint on the walls.
Like a black light type of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
And it kind of looks like at one point you're going through like a infected city, which I was kind of like, read the room after COVID.
Yeah, seriously.
Like,
I don't want to have to...
There was like toxic waste everywhere, like giant spiders. And the performers like blend in with the wall. And when you have the 3D glasses on, you can't see them at all. So they'll come out and they'll like grab you.
Oh.
And another fun part of this like Halloween Nights experience is that if you are a little bit of a thrill seeker.
Yeah, such as yourself.
Yes, you can choose to put on a glow stick necklace, and that gives performers the ability, the permission, if you will, to mess with you and like grab you and pull you away from your group and send you down like a separate experience, which is like pretty neat.
It's basically just saying like, hey, like I'm fair game if you want to do something crazy.
That's exactly what it is.
And you made your whole group wear them,
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely. We were not about to have any, like,
scared
cats in our group. So that was really fun.
The Delirium one sounds fun, but, like, going on that after having a drink would be, like, the most terrifying experience.
No, because they had one of those things that's, like, the bridge and then the spinny
Oh, my God, I love those
walls
things.
around
I love
it.
those, yes.
And I actually, like, thought I was I was so disoriented when I got out of that house that I was like...
You're like, wait, where am I?
Like, where am I? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Like, I don't know. It was very disconcerting. So then the next one we went into was the machine shop. And I had done Terror Behind the Walls, so I remembered this one. Machine shop is terrifying. It's basically like Texas Chainsaw Massacre meets mechanic shop. So
I don't like that combo.
There's people like running around with like saws, and some guy chased us with a chainsaw,
Terrifying.
which was really bad. The last time I did Terror at the Walls, that same guy chased me like out into this courtyard, and I ran straight into a cement wall. Which was...
He's got a steady job. He's
I
there
mean,
year
it's
after
kind of
year.
Funny, yeah.
Targeting you specifically because, oh, this bitch again.
She's back, baby. That's like the one thing that really gets me is chainsaws.
Yeah.
Like
because they keep everything on there besides like the actual like
chain.
Yeah, so like it sounds, it smells, it feels,
and
like
he does this little bit where he like sparks it on the concrete ground.
No, thank you.
It's very scary.
Very
scary. And then there's like obviously fake, but like disemboweled pigs like hanging from the thing, which is why it's giving. That. Yeah, I know. It's giving Texas Chainsaw. So that one is scary. That one really got me.
Yeah.
Then the next one we did was called The Crypt, and this one has arguably like the worst jump scare.
What was it? I feel like I didn't hear about The Crypt yet.
So The Crypt is the one where it has a very like unique entrance to it.
Okay.
And it's basically they send you in one or two at a time, and it's a school bus.
Oh, right.
And you enter through the front of the school bus and you exit through the back. But inside the bus is completely black, like they've blacked out all the windows, and they only have a singular strobe light.
Oh, strobe lights are so disorienting.
No, so you can barely see first of all where you're going.
Yeah.
And then you can make out shapes in the seats.
Okay.
And some of them are mannequins and some of them are not, and you can't tell which is which. So you'll just be walking, minding your own business, and then all of a sudden you'll get grabbed by one of the things that you thought was a mannequin.
That is terrifying.
Oh, it's very scary.
Oh, wow.
Very, very scary.
Wow.
But the last one that we did was my favorite, and it's called Nightmares, and it's based off of like classic fears that people have.
Okay, I like that.
So they had a room with a dentist, and like I said, I was wearing the necklace. So the dentist pulled me into the chair, and I was kind of like laughing because I was like, I don't think he's gonna do anything. So I was like, like you know, the
like,
dentist,
yeah,
stick your tongue out. And the man stuck the tool into my mouth
Ew!
and like, hit my tooth with it. And he was like, I bet you didn't think I was going to do that. And I was like, you are sure as hell right. I did not think you were going to do that.
I did not think that was in the contract, sir.
But okay. Then there was another room in there, which was like the coolest room out of any of them. And I don't know how they did it. I guess they had a fog machine on the floor.
Okay.
And then they had like a laser going across it.
Uh-huh.
And the way the fog looked, it looked like water. And it was like a jungle room. Like it looked like you were in the jungle. And the performers were beneath the fog. And they would like reach up and like, or like reach below and grab your foot.
Oh,
or like
God!
reach up with like a snake or like an alligator or something like looking like that.
That's crazy. You said there was a TikTok of this one, right?
Yes, I saw something like very similar to it on TikTok, which I was like, this is so neat.
That's so cool.
Then there was like dolls and like, you know, whatever else, but
the other classic fears.
Whew, I was sweating by the end of those 5 houses.
If you had a nightmare room in the house, what would your nightmare be?
That's a really good question. You already know my answer for this.
I do.
It would be a Jersey Devil themed room. Either that, or I'd want to do like, if I was in charge of designing it, I would do like a Jaws themed room where you would have like the same sort of effect with like the lasers and the fog, but you'd have like shark fins like going.
That would be awesome,
and
especially because a lot of people, that is like their biggest fear.
Oh yeah,
sharks
are
slash blood.
Yeah,
it could be like a gory shark. World.
But fun. That was my experience at Halloween Nights. I highly recommend going. It was so fun. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I have like 2 little fun facts about Eastern State Penitentiary.
Oh, I'm ready to hear them. Okay, let's hear them.
So Green Mile, like I said, was inspired by Eastern State Penitentiary because the floors were painted green.
Oh!
And, yeah, which is kind of neat. And also because of like all the stuff that happened there at the penitentiary. Do you know the plot of Green Mile?
Not at all, no.
It's about a man who is wrongfully convicted of sexual assault and murder of these 2 little girls, and they it's the Green Mile is the death row on the thing.
Oh, okay.
And I don't want to like spoil anything, but like
I'm not gonna watch.
He's got some supernatural powers.
Okay.
It's pretty neat.
Interesting.
And then also I thought was fun. There were movies filmed at Eastern State Penitentiary. One of them was called 12 Monkeys, and it stars Brad Pitt.
Okay.
And then one of the Transformers movies was also filmed, part of it, in Eastern State Penitentiary.
Why?
I don't know.
What part of the plot?
I have no idea.
Were they keeping, like, Optimus Prime in, like, in a cell?
solitary confinement?
In solitary confinement? Like, what is this?
I don't know. I've never seen any of the Transformers movies. So.
Yeah, I don't think I have either that I can think of. That doesn't seem like the type of thing I would watch.
When I first read it, I thought it said Terminator. Like the Terminator movies, and I was like, what?
Like, in what part of the plot? But I mean, I'm not surprised that it's been used in movies because it is such like a cinematic looking place.
It's such a sinister looking place.
It can fit into whatever you want the plot to be.
Oh yeah. But that, I think, is it for the Eastern State Penitentiary.
This one was really fun to do. The history of this place is crazy. Like,
it's wild.
This is an example of like fact being like crazier than fiction.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Like this from the escapes to like the torture methods to the different people that were there. It's just like what a history.
And now it's a museum and haunted house occasionally. That's wild.
It's
like,
cool.
That's crazy.
This is one of my favorite. Like this is like one of the places out of all the places we've discussed that I'm like I would totally go here again and again.
I was just there. I would go back again.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat.
It was really great.
But I thoroughly enjoy the Eastern State Penitentiary. I think everyone who works there is super passionate and awesome at keeping this place up and running. So credit to them. And if you are ever in the Philadelphia area, make sure you pay it a visit because it's absolutely worth it.
Definitely.
If you go at Halloween time, Halloween Nights is phenomenal. Very fun. So
I still can't get over the fact that they call it Halloween Nights.
Halloween Nights.
Very fun.
Get yourself a Pep's Pumpkin Punch and tell them MK sent.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Have a good one.
And we will be back soon with another East Coast Haunt.
And we have some big news coming. So
strap in.
Keep an eye out for that coming soon. We're both really, really excited. But I'm going to have to leave you on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, leave him on a cliffhanger. Leave him wondering.
Until then, follow our Instagram at east.coast.haunts. Send us a Gmail at east.
Send us a Gmail.
Send us a Gmail at east.coast.haunts
at gmail.com.
Visit our website. Sign up for our mailing list. Donate to our Patreon.
Whatever
like
you
our
want to do.
3 lovely people in the beginning of this episode.
Woo-hoo!
Whatever you feel so inclined to do. But enjoy yourself.
And we'll talk to you guys next time.
We're just two ghouls
creeping it real.
Bye.
Bye.